Hello, everyone. This is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director. Thank you for attending the December CSIA webinar. Today's webinar will provide information and a live example of how radio interviews can be part of your marketing program. Be sure to ask questions in the Q&A box. The host and sponsor of our monthly webinars is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. Software Toolbox helps system integrators lower their risk on projects that involve software by providing them a unique mix of off-the-shelf software products and rapid response technical support that minimizes the need for custom code and lowers field startup time risk. Many of you already know today's presenter, Todd Youngblood. He's been obsessed with continuous improvement of the sales process since I've known him, and certainly for a long time before that. Todd is founder and managing partner of the YPS Group that focuses on sales process management and improvement, and is co-founder of Dreamland Interactive, which helps individuals and organizations develop, maintain, and sell more faster with eReps, which are digital extensions of sales and marketing professionals. So, without further delay, here's Todd.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate the invitation back. It's always a pleasure to be working with CSIA and CSIA members. So, hello to everyone out there. I hope I know at least a few of you that are listening. I'm going to ask John if my slides are going to pop up here.
Todd, I need you to click on the third tab, the last tab on the right that says CSI Webinar, please. You're the presenter. You have to push your slides. Just click on the tab that says CSI. There we go. Thank you, sir.
Learning has occurred. Yeah, the topic today is one that I've shared parts of before with individuals and groups from CSIA. We'll get down into a little bit more detail of the whole notion of using a radio show / podcast to sell system integration. So the one theme that'll pervade this whole conversation that we'll have this morning, this is all about sales. It's all about talking to a customer, shaking a hand, making the eye contact, and closing a deal. So very, very much tactically sales-oriented in the context of a more strategic sales and marketing plan. In terms of an agenda, I'll take just a few minutes up front to set some context of the whole notion of eRep, the digital extension of a sales professional, and how radio is a part of that. Then we'll get into an actual interview, and Bob Lowe and I will interview John Weber, president of Software Toolbox, when we get to that point. So you'll notice the transition we make from presentation mode, me in presentation mode that is, and switch to the actual interview and what it looks like, feels like, sounds like. And then following that, I'll have a little bit of my perspective on what happened and why, and then a few comments to wrap the things up on what you all might do next if you think this is something that makes sense for you to integrate into your sales process. Just in terms of the context, a definition of an eRep, some of you may have heard me very vehemently stating that every individual sales professional, every individual marketing professional, executive, manager, absolutely needs to have a digital extension of him or herself and make a conscious and continuous effort to take the knowledge and experience that's in your brain, to meet between the ears, so to speak, pull that out of your brain, that tacit knowledge, and make it explicit, that is embedded into some kind of a digital format. It might be text, it might be image, it might be audio, it might be video, it might be some combination of all of the above. And in general, overall, what that accomplishes is to take all your knowledge, experience, skills, and insights and makes them available on the internet, 24 by 7 by 365 to anybody in the world when they want it on demand. So that's the 30-second commercial for the overall notion of what is an eRep. Simply stated, it's just a digital extension of yourself. The radio component of eRep. It is just one aspect of it, albeit one that's pretty robust, probably the most robust in audio and video. But keep in mind that overall we're talking about eRep. Radio is one specific example of how that's done. And the picture you see there is one of our actual studios with some folks sitting around. Obviously today, or maybe not obviously, today's interview is going to be via telephone. So it won't be the in-person thing. But the concept is just the same. The real point here is that radio is one part of eRep, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the whole idea behind an eRep is to sell more stuff and sell it in less time. Very, very tactical orientation. Another piece of the context, and along the lines of what I was just talking about, this is a representation of the sales process when the CSIA, Sales Excellence Council, a couple of years back put together a generalized sales process for a CSIA member. This is what we came up with. What you see represented there is, call it the funnel, from identifying an opportunity, gaining attention, i.e. getting an appointment with, getting a conversation with a prospect. You see a circle around that one because radio, the radio portion of eRep is extremely effective as a replacement for a cold call. So that gaining the initial attention, establishing the initial relationship with a decision-making executive. Difference between saying, hey, do you want to buy some sales process engineering today on a traditional cold call versus, hey, John Weber, you've got a very robust set of tools of extreme interest in the industrial sector space to all manufacturing and certainly systems integrator. Would love to have your perspective shared with our audience on manufacturing revival radio. So what I just articulated is the difference between a traditional cold call and an invitation to John to share his brilliance with folks that are in fact sitting in his target marketplace. So that's one positioning of, or one of the positionings of radio in the tactical sales process. Once I've gone through my funnel, if you will, that main line that was on the slide a minute ago, then I've got to deliver and or implement whatever the heck it is I sold, and then maintain the loyalty and the satisfaction of that customer over the long term. And you'll see another circle around that build loyalty stage of the sales process, and that is I want to keep you happy over time. So if John, for example, has been my customer for the last 20 years, I may well reach out and change my invitation just slightly and to say, hey, you've been such a good partner, such a good customer over the year. Would like to help you get some more exposure to your marketplace. Love to have you as a guest on the radio show. So I'm giving additional value to a long-time customer. Similar to that initial establishment of a relationship, when I'm building loyalty, it's just a more long-term view so that I can continue to get business from this good customer of mine. I'm going to fill in the rest of the blanks of the whole sales process that CSIA built a couple of years back, but we're not going to talk about any other box other than marketing. All of you, I'm sure, are familiar with search engine optimization, the whole idea of having lots of content published out on the internet available to the search engines. So one of my favorite questions is when they Google, will you be there? That idea of the more content that you have, the more eRep digital content that you have out on the internet, the more likely it is you're going to be found. So it's a major, major piece of anybody's marketing effort. I'll come back and talk about the kind of content, derivative content, not only the interview, the radio interview itself, but additional derivative content that gives you lots and lots of very high quality content in text, in image, and audio. That provides a little bit of a context. We're kind of leading up here to getting into the actual interview itself. I'm going to come back following the interview and talk more about the notion of relationships, arrows, and chum. But just so you can kind of keep this in the back of your head as we go through it, there are three main things that I want to accomplish in inviting someone to be a guest on a radio show and with the interview itself and the follow-up thereof. One is to either establish or nurture a establish a new relationship or nurture an existing relationship, an extremely powerful and important part of the invitation and interview process. The second point is arrows. Think of arrows as bits of content. For example, if a customer comes up with an objection that I need to address, once I've done a bunch of interviews, I have lots and lots of bits of content. So if I have objection X, I can pull that arrow out of my quiver and fire it right between the eyes of that customer and have a piece of digital content that addresses that objection or articulates a value proposition or delivers some kind of a message. So think of arrows as a weapon of individual bits of content that are articulating a value proposition, addressing an objection, or delivering some important piece of information. And then finally, chum. The idea of chum the water. Anybody that's been fishing, throw the blood and guts over the side to attract a lot of fish. That's the search engine optimization, the SEO piece of it. As I get more content, Google loves audio and video content particularly, so that there's a lot of when they Google, will you be there pieces to it. With that, I want to move into the actual interview. Take a second or two to talk about setup, and then we'll do the actual interview and a little bit of the follow-up, and then get into the remainder of the presentation. But prior to an interview, I mean, this is basic blocking and tackling. Just like I have to identify an opportunity and identify an individual customer decision maker that can help me move that opportunity to fruition, I have to identify somebody that I want to interview. In this particular case, Bob Lowe and I conspired. Is that the right word, Bob?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bob and I conspired to invite John Weber to be the victim or the guest. I say victim with a big smile on my face. We got the thing scheduled into the normal rotation of the CSIA webinars. Bob and I have done a bunch of these interviews over the last 2 years or so, and we have a set of standard questions that we ask guests, and we also brief the guests beforehand, John in this case, on the types of questions that we're going to ask. And then just before the actual interview begins, and I'll do it right now, I'll say, John, look, the main purpose of what we're about to do in this interview is to give you a platform to articulate the Software Toolbox value proposition or whatever other messages you want. Before we get the interview started, John, is there anything in particular you want to make sure that Bob and I tee up for you so that you can press a topic, an announcement, a new product, anything?
Not in particular. You know, you did a good job in the preparation that you gave me an outline of the flow. I think just the thing to keep in mind is that we're an automation software product supplier and we're not a system integrator. So, you know, you'll want your questions to adjusted that way. But you know, I've got an application I'll talk about using that actually involves an integration project and how we helped somebody and what the ROI of that was. So nothing in particular. Thanks for asking. Okay,
just want to make sure, and I'll step out of role for a second here, John. Just if you could take another 15 seconds and describe from your perspective how we prepped you for this interview we're about to do.
You sent me a Word doc and for me to look at, and I went through it. I asked a few questions. You all answered them. Yeah, it was a very nice outline that allowed me to think about things in advance.
One of the reasons, again, I'm stepping out of the rule of the interview now for a second. One of the reasons I asked John about that is to just emphasize to you folks listening on the webinar how simple it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tendency sometimes to overcomplicate this whole thing. All we're going to do is going to be three of us talking business, talking shop. So it's a conversation that your guest that you may invite has every day. There's nothing mysterious. There's nothing scary. We're not out to ask any gotcha kind of questions. Just as I said, I want to provide a platform for my guest to articulate the message that he or she wants to do.
Sure. And I'll add, so the audience knows before you get started, I'm not reading anything I'm going to say to you from a script. I've thought about some things I want to say, off the top of my head, and I've got a browser open with one of our success stories on it just to keep me on track and help me support that fourth bullet called being brief.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm just going to talk like I'd be talking to somebody over, over dinner. Says, so what is it you guys do?
And that's exactly what we're about to do. I'm going to fall back into role now, and this is just how we would normally conduct the very end of the briefing and into the interview. So, John, what we're going to do is we'll go about 20 minutes total. We'll go about 10 minutes and have a quick break. We'll insert a commercial. It'll actually be a CSIA commercial in between, and then we'll go about another 10 minutes of the conversation with you. It's not live, so if you want to restate something or go back and have a question rephrased, go ahead and feel free. We can edit ums and ahs and mistakes out, so we can do that as well. I'll introduce the show. Bob and I will banter a bit. Bob will introduce you. I'll ask the first question, and we'll just take it from there. So, all set, John?
Yes, sir.
Bob, you ready to go?
Yes. John, you're located where in North Carolina?
Charlotte.
Okay.
I love that. Okay, if we're all set, I'll do a countdown, and we'll dive into the actual interview. All good?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so we'll get started in 5, 4. Hello, and welcome back to Manufacturing Revival Radio. I'm your host, Todd Youngblood. My normal co-host, Todd Schnick, is off getting married, so he's not going to be with us today. I can't believe that he would rather go to his own wedding than have the interview of the individual we have on today. Lucky for me and lucky for our guests, I have a longtime guest co-host with me today, a good friend of mine, Mr. Bob Lowe, who's Executive Director of the Control System Integrators Association. Bob, thanks for being co-host again. Glad to be working with you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Todd.
And I know you are the globe-trotting, always busy, active, doing cool things Executive Director of CSIA. Take a sec, Bob. Tell us what you've been up to lately.
Oh, gosh, it's been a real plethora of activities through the fall. I always have it's a very busy time of year for events, both industry and partner events. So, yeah, through the fall is a busy travel schedule, and of course, part of that now is the follow-up to all the really wonderful people that I've met at shows, and I'm blending that in with daily activities. One of the major initiatives right now with CSIA is rewriting our certification management system. So I'm working with that with the rest of our staff, working with global growth, and we just completed a survey that we did in conjunction with J.P. Morgan, an industry survey for the status of automation in the control systems integration industry. So, gosh, it has been a busy time. However, we're not here today to talk about me. So let's talk about our guest. We have John Weber, President of Software Toolbox, located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they are an automation product supplier. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to actually be in Charlotte now for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we all get to stay home for the next couple of weeks, hopefully, John. Hey, just to get us started off, John, give us a little bit of insight into your own background. How'd you get from where you were to where you are today?
Well, besides probably temporary and then permanent insanity of deciding to be a business owner, which a lot of our listeners today are fellow business owners, my background's in industrial and systems engineering, and I started my career with GE Fanuc Automation, that some of our folks now know as GE Intelligent Platforms. I started out in PLC technical support and then went through GE's corporate training program, and then moved to the field and had a sales support territory in the Carolinas, and then worked for one of their large distributors. And out of that experience of helping integrators, users, and OEMs choose, install, configure, and get results from PLCs, HMI, motion, vision, everything, came the genesis of the idea of Software Toolbox.
Well, take us another step there. Tell us a little bit about what Software Toolbox is all about.
Sure. I always like to put things in the concept of, well, what's the pain? If you're going to start a business, you're going to do something, you want to offer something that is either going to help somebody address current pain, prevent future pain, or bring them current or future pleasure. And you know, we all work real hard, but at the end of the day, we have lives, and that's why we work. And one of the pains that I experienced when I worked for a PLC, worked for an automation distributor, and worked with clients was that everybody knows the big major tier automation players out there, your GE, Rockwell, Siemens, and there's also a whole tier of software products out there that complement and add value to HMI, SCADA, ERP, all the different software applications that are at the high level. And what I experienced was that when I'd be working with a client to, say, put in one of GE's systems, we invariably would need some of these add-on products from other software suppliers to complete the picture, to do all the functionality. Maybe it was a communications driver, maybe it was an add-on visualization tool, but we needed this other stuff. And what I found was that there was a lot of this stuff out there, but the infrastructure wasn't there in the marketplace for customers, whether they're a system integrator, an end user, or a machinery OEM, or a consultant, to find, evaluate, buy, and get support at a world-class level for all those products. So here you have these great software tools, but no place to take care of all those other things. And at the end of the day, the customer's not just buying the software on at the time, goodness, it was floppy disks in the early 90s. Now it's mostly digital downloads. But they aren't just buying the bits. You know, they're buying the results that software provides and support to do that. So the idea of Software Toolbox was hatched out of, what if we could create a place that could wrap all of that around these products and have a world-class place for people to come and get these products and get support for them. So that's how the idea was hatched in 1996. And I went around to a lot of these small developers and said, "Look, you're good at developing. We're good at sales support and marketing. We need to come together." So that's how we were born. Over time, it's evolved that we have software products that we develop ourselves. A large portion comes from our network of partners. Bottom line, what ties all this together for the customers is they all have business results they're trying to get in their manufacturing process, or if they're a public utility such as water, wastewater, or power generation, or if they're an oil and gas producer, they're trying to produce results for their customers. And in order to do that in a rapidly changing environment, they need real-time information, and they need it delivered in ways that are contextually and useful, contextual to the way they work, and where they need it, when they need it. And all of our products help them do that. So people often ask me, "What industry are you in?" I'm like, anybody who has this insatiable need for data, collect it, store it, visualize it, and they realize that they're not going to get it all done with just one big supplier application. They need all the rest of this. So that's the pain. Kind of gives you a feel of the pain we solve for the developers we work with who source our product, people who are distributors selling automation products who need the expertise of these other third-party products, and they need world-class support for them because they're salespeople. They can't afford, and we sell $1,000 stuff. You can't put an outside salesperson on a $1,000 product, but he needs it to sell his $50,000 product. Then if you're an end user, an integrator, an OEM, it's about getting your business results, reducing your risk on the project, and reducing your cost. The risk thing is really important. I came from a world, Todd, where people used to write custom code. I remember my first job at GE that you wanted to accomplish certain things with their HMI. Oh, we can do that. Here's a $10,000 SDK, and you need to go get yourself a C coder. By the time we're done, it's a $30,000 project that now has to be supported over a 10-year life cycle. And all the suppliers were that way 20-something years ago. Well, with standards and the development of software tools, part of our story is the last thing you should do is write custom code. because you have to support that over the life cycle. There's a tool for that. And there's often an off-the-shelf product that can solve whatever that business manufacturing integration problem is, and you can configure it to get custom-like results using an off-the-shelf product. So, a lot of words there, but that's how we help a lot of people. I've been doing it for 16 years.
I listened to you describe what Software Toolbox, the value that Software Toolbox brings to the table. I can't help but think about complexity. And clearly, you're helping your clients deal with all of the complexity in putting all these systems together. On the flip side of it, you're one more player in the mix, so that adds some complexity, I would think. Talk a little bit about how you help integrate all these different moving pieces without further complicating the whole thing.
Sure. That's a great observation, great question, Todd. Sure, we're another player in the mix, but the reality of automation systems, and of course our CSIA members know this, is it's rare to get a one-vendor solution. So although we're another player in the mix, it's much better off than if they had to go and work with all the multiple different developer partners. The world before Software Toolbox was the integrator who's maybe using Rockwell HMI might have to deal with 3 or 4 other software providers for the other pieces. With Software Toolbox, if they're getting those same pieces from us, well, part of our value circle, I have this wheel I draw where you have the core product, and we have the variety of the products. We have the knowledge of how those products work together with each other and work with all the other big players' products, and the ability to support those products. So we actually are removing complexity and risk because we're basically providing the user, OEM, or SI a single point of contact for all these different pieces. So although it looks like we're one more player, we're actually reducing the number of players and giving them one point. Our distributors tell us the same thing. They say, yeah, we could go set up relationships with some of these people who you have, who you source your products from, and we get the product at the same price. But then we have to deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. By dealing with you, Software Toolbox, that gives us an economy of scale and efficiency, one place to go and say, Software Toolbox, you take care of this.
Very good.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's an attempt.
Well, we need to take a quick break now, but we'll be back in a minute with John Weber, President of Software Toolbox. Okay, now insert commercial break. As I mentioned before, we'll edit this thing after the fact before we publish it. Great job so far, John.
Thank you.
Bob, you obviously have a question because I think I just cut you off.
That's what happens when you're doing things live.
Yeah. What I'll do in a second here, I'll give us a countdown coming out of the break. Then I will reintroduce you, John. And then as soon as I do that, Bob, you want to come in with your follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay. And we'll, as I said, we went just a tad long on that first segment, so we'll probably go 9.5 minutes on the second segment. You guys don't need to worry about the timing. John, you
I've got to watch. I'm ready.
Hey, Bob, you set?
Yes.
All right. So we'll come back out of the break in 5, 4. We're back with John Weber, President of Software Toolbox.
John, I have a question for you. Everybody loves stories. Can you tell us of all the many applications in which you've been involved, tell us where you've solved the problem or relieved the pain, as you describe it, of one of your clients.
Sure, thanks, Bob. Would love to do that. Love to tell stories. One of the ones I'm going to share is one where it's one of my favorite ones because it has just an insane ROI. As you know, Bob, like you, I get around the planet a bit. One of
yes,
my favorite places to get to is South Africa, and spend a fair amount of time at times there. We had a project there where, bottom line, the ROI was they saved $21 million in downtime using a $2,500 product. And
wow.
Yeah, it's one where I probably go, wow, I probably should have value priced the product more, but It makes for a good dramatic effect. It got your attention, didn't it, Bob?
Yes, it did. Now, convert that to time, and it sounds like it paid for itself in about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think it was about 5 or 7 minutes, something like that. It was crazy, but you know, I can tell you a little bit about how we do it. Obviously, we got limited time today, but the full story is available on our website. The application was in a food processing plant, or actually a grain milling plant. They're replacing an old PLC and HMI system with a totally new PLC and a totally new HMI. And as many of our listeners know, when you do that, obviously everything has to be checked out in the field, and you typically have to take a shutdown period, and that means lost production. It means you're not making anything during that period. Well, this particular integrator was fairly clever, and he realized that, wait a minute, there's ways I could do things I could wire up the new PLC to the I/O, at least to the inputs, in parallel to the old one, and I could sit there on the new HMI and watch the inputs change, but of course I can't hook up to the outputs. I don't dare do that because the plant's running. But one of the challenges was they said, well, the operators are running the system. I'm over here on the new HMI. I have no transparency or visibility into what's happening on the old system. If the operator changes a set point, starts a motor, I don't have a way to know that on this new system that I'm trying to make sure my new HMI screens work, my PLC program operates the way I want it to. So what they did was they used one of the products that Software Toolbox brings to market. It's a product called the Cogent Data Hub, and they put this piece of software on the old system, and they hooked it into the communications server software between the old HMI and the PLC, and they just tapped into it, kind of like you take a multimeter and put it on an input in a PLC and look at the voltage, and monitored all that communications. They pushed a copy of all that over to a copy of Data Hub that's sitting on the new HMI system. The new HMI was wired up to that Data Hub. So what would happen is they could sit at the new HMI on a new computer sitting right next to the other operator, or in the other room or around the back or something, and every time they do something, they'd see it change there. They could then see how they could then take those operator changes that were coming over from the old system to the new one, and using the Data Hub and our top server driver, push it into the new Mitsubishi PLC and push those changes down and see how their PLC program behaved. Well, what this allowed them to do was ring out and test their entire PLC program, the entire HMI in parallel, watching what was going on. Then when that was done, part of when they took their downtime for the getting the wiring right is they had all the I/O connections on the old PLCs on 40-pin connectors. Same 40-pin connectors on the new PLC. They had done these special connectors so they could just unplug from the old and plug into the new. So they did all this checkout over several days, and then when they were ready, they took a 1-hour downtime, moved all the cables over, did one last look, and brought it back up. So instead of 30 days of downtime to do all the checkouts on this mill, they did the checkout at whatever pace they wanted, and the switchover was an hour. And so when you do the math on what the value of the grain that they would have milled, it would have not gotten to mill in that 30 days, it was $21 million because they just kept running while they did their checkouts. So there you have it.
Wow, that's amazing.
John, as I hear you describe that application, I was trying to assume the mindset of a CSIA member of a system integrator, and two things kind of jumped into my head. One, the ROI. I mean, you can't. I can't get my brain off that $21 million. From the customer, it strikes me that also using your tools, that the deal for the system integrator got bigger than it would have been if they hadn't partnered with you. So two-part question. Is that the case typically? And the second part of my question is, what's the best way for me as a systems integrator to work with you, to best leverage the skills and value that you have?
Sure. Well, let's take your first part. In terms of did the deal get bigger for them, I guess how do you define bigger? Because I don't think we actually increased the amount of work they had to do. sure there was some work to set it up, but and I definitely think it decreased his risk, which is where CSI integrators I've worked with tell me that, look, field startup time and commissioning is a huge risk, and it's the most expensive time because I have a guy or gal out in the field, they're on T&L, those are expensive hours, and anything you can do to reduce that time and lower that risk means a more profitable, successful project. So what did you have in mind when you said the word bigger?
Okay. Oh, all right, you clarified something for me. It's not so much making the revenue side of the equation bigger for the integrator as it is reducing risk in the expense side.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's, like I said, that's where integrators have told me that's where the real pain can come for them. All this other stuff's important, and it does matter. But boy, stuff when and it's the same way. We develop about 30% of our product. Anybody experienced in development will tell you that a bug found after the product is shipped costs 10,000 times more to fix than a bug found, or the root cause of a bug found and sorted out during the design phase. And there's several steps along the way in a project where it goes 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 as you go down. Integration's the same way. So
John, that's a very compelling reason to never write custom code.
Absolutely.
It's very obvious,
Absolutely.
with that being the information. I have a question.
Yeah.
Who was involved in the decision to use your product? Was it the system integrator, or was it the client, or both?
It was the system integrator, and we had an existing relationship with the SI. They had used our top server OPC servers with some wonderware projects they'd done throughout South Africa, and they came to us, which kind of allows me to answer Todd's second question, because I know we're short on time, is they came to us and said, hey, we're working on this project. The customer's really, really concerned about losing production time, but he knows he's got to get this upgrade in place because he's going to get more capacity out of it. Here's the pain. Have you got any ways that we could do something so we could mirror the old HMI data into the new? And we had a conversation about understanding all the details, all the engineering details of what he was trying to accomplish, and then started kicking around solutions and ideas and came up with the idea of, I think we could do this with Data Hub. And he downloaded a trial copy from our website, did some testing, figured some things out with it, and said, yeah, I see how this will work. And, that's really how most folks engage with us. They either drop us an email on support@softwaretoolbox.com, which we're kind of funny because a lot of people's support is, oh, something's broken. No, we're here to support you at every phase of the project. So you email anything you want to support@softwaretoolbox.com, and we'll try to help you out that way. But also, more importantly, just pick up the phone and give us a call. We've got a U.S.-Canada toll-free number. It's 888-665-3678. We have a global number, 704-849-2773. If you're a Skype fan, just call Software Toolbox. There's a Skype ID out for that, and it'll ring right here in our office. Just call us and talk to us. Tell us what you're trying to accomplish. We'll ask questions. If we can help you, we will. If we can't, we'll say, no, I don't think we can help with that, but we might know somebody that does. So engage with us. Use whatever channel works for you, and just let us hear what you're trying to accomplish. Todd, that's the best way for folks to engage.
Well, that's great. I mean, we are out of time, unfortunately. Breaks my heart. I've got about 10 more questions I'd like to ask you, John, but I do appreciate you giving us all that contact information. That's my normal last question, but you already answered all that, how to get to softwaretoolbox.com and the phone number and Skype. So really do appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon and share some of your insights. Really, really interesting stuff.
Thanks for the opportunity, Todd.
Yep. Thank you, John.
Well, once again, this has been Manufacturing Revival Radio. Our guest today, Mr. John Weber, President of Software Toolbox. On behalf of John, my co-host Bob Lowe, I'm Todd Youngblood. We'll talk to you next time on Manufacturing Revival Radio. Thanks for listening. Okay, endo interview.
We're clear.
I will. I'm gonna fall out of role again. Normally, the follow-up. If you all picture the conversation that we just had, there's normally a bunch of banter afterwards, which we will not do today. And the banter would be, another word for banter is sales call. In other words, Bob and I would engage John, talk about some of the things that he had brought up, ask some additional questions we may have. So, again, don't want to take the time during our webinar to go through that, but I want to reinforce it because it's very, very important from a tactical sales standpoint. We invited John to be a guest on our radio show specifically to establish and or nurture our business relationship with him. Never ever lose sight of that. Additional kind of housekeeping follow-up that we'll do, and it's the kind of thing you'd also want to put in an email to your guest in addition to the conversation. But the whole notion of we'll take the interview we just did, we'll edit it, we'll put some music around it, insert the commercial, write some text so that it can be published in the context of a blog post. Very important and something that the guests really like a lot is to make a big deal out of the fact of, hey, John, the audio that we just recorded is yours, the edited portion and the unedited if you want it. Use it however you want. For example, post it on your own website. Either put a link back to Manufacturing Revival Radio or host it and help you if you need help with an audio player to put on your own site. Probably if you have an e-newsletter that goes out, put a link to your e-newsletter, put a link to the interview in your e-newsletter and send that out. Share it on your blog, on iTunes. It'll go in iTunes. Tweet it, share it on LinkedIn, all of those social media platforms. I mean, the content is yours to use, so use it. Again, in a nutshell, the whole conversation that we as hosts have with the guest after the show, it is continuing the sales call. And from my own experience, I can tell you the conversation after the interview is really when a lot of the magic happens. Let's get back into this what just happened, and I want to talk about the relationships, arrows, and chum again to reinforce what just happened. Let's talk about the relationship thing first. If you think in terms of who, Bob and John, I think you two guys know each other better, certainly than I know John. But if you think in terms of the interaction between Bob and John, reinforcing that relationship. John and I have met, don't know each other all that well. I ask you to think in terms of the depth of the discussion that we got into. If you think of the first sales call you make on somebody you either don't know or don't know very well, you can easily take an hour doing all of the bonding, relationship establishment, rapport building, etc. And in that call, quite often do not get into needy details. So if you go back and listen to the 20 minutes we just did and focus on the depth of the discussion. John was down into the weeds of what Software Toolbox does, the value it provides. We got deep into a specific application. So,
yeah, but Todd, I wouldn't do that in an initial sales call. I'd be doing a lot to turn it around to try to understand out of the prospect what's going on in their world.
That's the point. In the context of a sales call, it's tougher to do that. In the context of a video show, you can ask questions, and the guest, as John did, waxes eloquent on what's all.
Right. My natural desire would have been to ask you more questions, Todd. And if you actually were a potential prospect, I would have been asking you more questions to understand what you do, because I don't want to drone on and on about stuff that might not be relevant to what's going on in your business and what's keeping you up at night, what your biggest challenges are. You know, Software Toolbox can do it. I'd have done something so, gee, Todd, Software Toolbox can do 1,000,001 things, lots of different stories. Or when Bob asked me, I'd have said, gee, Bob, well, tell me more about the typical applications, industries you work in, and the things that you all find frustrating. Because I'd be trying to then see, okay, gee, he serves this segment, he runs into this problem a lot. Then I'd reach into my brain and pick a story that was relevant to that and say, well, gee, I don't know, this might not be of use to you or not, but can I share a story with you? See if it's any interest to you?
You clearly, John, understand exactly how to do your own radio show when you are the host. That's precisely what Bob and I did to you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
If I'd been sitting talking with one of our audience members who's a CSIA member, it would have been a different way because it'd be a one-on-one, and I could ask some things relevant to theirs. When you're doing this radio thing, I'm kind of going, okay, well, I sort of got to well, you put it up there, chum. I'm kind of throwing some stuff out there to see does anything come up and chew on it.
Again, just to clarify the point, in the context of the example interview that we just did, the sellers are Bob Lowe and Todd Youngblood. Prospect, John Weber. I just want to clarify that in everybody's mind. If the roles had been reversed, if John had been the host and Bob and I had been the guests, then you would have asked a whole different set of questions, John, than Bob and I asked of you. We were picking your brain, selling to you.
Well, I'm glad we got to have that clarification. And I just saw a comment come over on chat. Thanks. I was confused too.
The other thing I'd throw out is in the context of what we just said, is the last bullet on the slide here. If you think of the value that came out of it, I'm a sales guy, and I can guarantee you all, I see opportunity for Software Toolbox and Dreamland Radio to work together. I'd be stunned if Bob Lowe didn't learn a few more things that can enhance the collaboration between Software Toolbox and CSIA. And same goes for CSIA and Dreamland. So the three of us in the conversation all see a little more opportunity in working with the other than we did before. Just to summarize it, if you look at hosting your own radio show, inviting prospects and customers as your guests, the power of this thing in establishing and or nurturing a relationship is extremely powerful. It's a big deal. You save a ton of time, a lot more relationship building in a lot less time consuming. Second piece of it, I talked about arrows before we did the actual interview. And if you think in terms of the number of arrows that we just produced, there's the interview itself. That's one arrow. And John, in particular, if you do this, you could go back and listen to that 20 minutes worth of content and pick out probably 6 or 7 or 8 sound bites. Take that application example as one of them. You could put the entire interview and publish just the application example. Write some text around it with a little more detail. That's another post. The overview of Software Toolbox that John did at the very beginning, that could get carved out and published as another post. Our experience has been the 6 to 8 in a 20-minute interview. Typically, there are 6 to 8 additional pieces of derivative content. One of the issues a lot of folks have in doing all this social media, so-called social media marketing and blogging is, where on earth am I going to get all the content? What you just heard in 20 minutes is about probably a dozen or so pieces of content that could be used by Software Toolbox, CSIA, and Manufacturing Revival Radio. So lots. It's a flood of content gets produced out of this. And again, the soundbite piece of it, I want to reinforce the arrow aspect of it. Think of the soundbites you can pull out. You're in a sales process with a customer. They have an objection about X. You've got all this content you've produced from your radio show. You can pull out the appropriate arrow, fire it off at that customer, and shoot them right between the eyes with that arrow. So lots of content, lots of very focused content in terms of articulating aspects of your value proposition and addressing objections and issues that pop up during your sales process. And then finally, I think the chum part of it is painfully obvious by now. You're going to get SEO juice from all the things that are listed there itself, the interview, each soundbite, each tweet, each LinkedIn share, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, it's SEO bait for all of the entities that were involved in the interview. Just this last slide, I just reinforced that the establishment of the relationship specifically, John and I have a tighter bond than we had 20 minutes ago. So that's to gain attention, establish a relationship. Bob and John have deepened their knowledge and ability to collaborate with one another, and we got all kinds of marketing material. So again, just tying it back to the tactical sales process. And then one more slide, and I'll quit yapping at y'all. All of this radio thing is not difficult to do. It sounds complex. It sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, but it can be as simple as 3 tools that are listed right there. The recording equipment, you can have a whole sound studio like I have. Something as simple as Skype can be, and it's got a recording capability on it, a thing called Skype Call Recorder, $20 piece of software from Skype. Audacity, free open source software. You can do audio editing. And WordPress is, in my opinion, the easiest, most brainless publishing platform known to man. So that, in terms of the tools that you need, it really is as simple as that. Probably the single most challenging thing is to be a decent interviewer. If you've ever made a sales call and you're good at making a sales call, an interview is very similar. A little bit different, a little more skill you got to learn, but not a great leap at all from being able to ask questions in a sales call and ask questions in terms of an interview. Then you've got to be able to edit. So you've got to have some editing skills and some copywriting skills as well. But I guess to sum the whole thing up, the context of the radio interview, in terms of relationships, it shortens the sales cycle because of the depth of conversation you get into quickly. In my mind, I've said relationship building probably 15 times in my comments here. That is far and away the most valuable piece of hosting your own radio show. And then you've got the content, which results in the arrows and the chum, as we've just discussed. So yeah, radio to cell systems integration. I hope you're getting at least close to as sold on it as I am on that concept. I'll quit with my prepared remarks there, and I don't know, are there any questions out there, John?
Yeah, Todd. There's one that came over in the chat, and the question was, what are the typical roles that would be an audience for radio? It seems technical in description, but ROI is more business. And I did respond to them, let them know, yeah, I probably got too technical in my part of the interview. But related to this, I'm hearing all these usages for the content as more use on digital media, meaning posted on your website, all the ways to use it. I'm not so sure I see the, okay, where's this going to appear on a radio station part of it. So anyway, 2-part, were the roles that would be the audience for the radio, and gee, how much this is really radio versus just it's audio through various channels.
Yeah. A little bit of semantics. I'll answer the second question first. We we call it radio. And in fact, what's emerging in that industry is that a podcast is being referred to as a radio show.
Oh.
All that said, let's not get confused with the semantics. What I've been talking about here today is a podcast.
Okay.
Now, have we done it live streaming over the internet? Yes. My next comment's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I look at what we're doing with radio shows, and when folks ask me who's the audience, my tongue-in-cheek reply is, I could care less. I really don't give a damn if anybody's listening. Why? My audience is the person I'm interviewing. It's back to my beating the drum on the relationship piece. That's my audience. Now, after the fact, once I publish it, Do I want to do all the SEO stuff and the social media promotion and all of the marketing things behind it? Absolutely yes. In terms of audience, that's really not primarily who I'm going at. Relationship with the guest, and then in terms of, in the context of arrows, after the fact, it might be a week, a month, a year later, I may use a soundbite or 2 or 3 or 20 to reinforce a conversation one-on-one again, yet with someone else. Having said all that, can I answer all the different moving parts of your question?
Yeah, I think so. And you actually, I think that helped answer one of the questions that's down in the Q&A panel you can see there. You know, they asked, is this more of a podcast that you host on your website? And it seems very clear to me that's one of the places you could use the content. Now, so it sounds like, one of Vance Van Doren's brought up, and I agree with Vance, so for John, for me to use this technique, I would turn around and go work with you and go interview people I'd like to cultivate as clients? Is that?
Exactly.
What?
Exactly.
Interesting.
But I am advocating for the folks on the webinar today that you establish your own radio show. And the main again is selling. You sell a relationship. Don't make a cold call. Hey, do you want to buy some systems integration today? Because they can't hang the phone up fast enough. Right? Share their expertise, value they provide to the marketplace as guests on your Software Toolbox, radio show.
Interesting. Well, let's put this in the context of a CSIA member, because we've got some of them on the phone. So a CSIA integrator member might create a radio show to talk about issues that they know their typical suspect or prospect they'd like to sell to would be interested in, and try to get them to actually come on the show and be interviewed to talk about those subjects?
Yes. If I'm a systems integrator and I'm going to have a radio show, I would not call it Systems Integration Radio Show, because it's not about systems integration. It's all about my marketplace. So if my target market is food and beverage manufacturers, and I'm just pulling an example out of the sky, I would ask myself, what kind of topics are food and beverage manufacturers interested in? Well, they're interested in X and Y. Well, I'm going to establish the X and Y radio show, where we're going to explore all aspects of X and Y from every perspective possible. Not about me, not about the systems integrator hosting the show. It's all about the target market, the prospect, the customer. Okay.
Well, selecting the interviewees from what typical roles? That's a question one of our attendees has.
The role of the person I would invite as a guest, I look at it exactly the same way I look at it when I am a sales professional. Who are the people that are part of the decision network that are going to make the decision to buy my product or service? So it might be, in the case of a system integrator, it would certainly be engineering function. So people that have strong influence as engineers. It could be manufacturing operations. They're going to have an influence. It may be someone in finance that's going to do the analysis of the ROI. I'm going to invite people as guests who are going to have a strong influence on buying my stuff. It's a sales call. The radio show, the entire thing is a sales call. Dramatically different context than a traditional sales call. But in terms of setting it up, who do I target to get as a guest? The guys say, yeah, I'm going to buy something.
Todd, that kind of gets right at the question, if you look down there in the Q&A panel that Vance has put forth. Does the interviewee typically understand that the interview is part of the interviewer's sales strategy? Does he, the interviewee, know that the answers he's giving are less important than the conversation itself?
The very straightforward answer to that is yes. course, unless you're interviewing a dope, which I say that with a smile on my face. I mean, folks are not dumb enough to realize that's not what's going on.
Well, if somebody knows that you're trying to sell to them, why would they agree to go on the radio show anyway and have this publicly put on the supplier's website? Just devil's advocate, because you've obviously been successful doing this.
Great question. Great question. The whole context of the invitation is just as we talked about the setup earlier in the presentation part of today's webinar, is that we had a exchange of a couple of emails of what the purpose of this whole thing was. Typically, there's also a phone conversation or two. And my statement, or the host of the show's statement, the show producer statement is, the objective of Manufacturing Revival Radio is to celebrate interesting, cool things that people are doing in the industrial sector that are contributing to the revival of U.S. manufacturing. John Weber, man, the stuff you're doing is way cool. I'd love to have you articulate your value to our audience. And then you can get the recording, you can put it on your website, tweet it, blah, 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 all et cetera, all that stuff. Am I trying to sell you, and is it obvious? Yes. So, surprise, surprise. More importantly, am I providing value to you? Am I giving you a platform to address your audience, deliver your value proposition, your marketing statement? Yes. Am I going to help you do it? Yes. Am I going to help you promote it? Yes. Am I going to flog the hell out of you and thank you for being a guest on my show? Yes. So yes, am I getting value? Absolutely. Are you getting value? Absolutely.
So Todd, would the interviewee then perhaps perceive themselves as a subject matter expert, and the result of the interview is going to become a part of like a library or a collection of podcasts on the topic of problems in the food and beverage industry, for example? Is that the way it would be perceived, and not so much as you trying to sell them something?
It is perceived that way as well. I mean, let me throw another. Clearly, unless your guest is asleep, they realize that you're trying to establish a business relationship. This is no surprise to anybody. Is it smart to do a hard sell in the context of the interview? Well, it'd be hard for me to think of something dumber to do. Now I've established a relationship. If it makes sense, in this specific example, I have no idea if John Weber and I will ever do business. But you know what? If I call John, I'll bet you he'll return my call. And he can say, you know what? We don't have anything to do. Go away. Don't call me. Sorry to be a broken record. It's all about sales. And back to your specific question, Bob, is the guest a subject matter expert? And will I build up a library of subject matter experts talking about topic X? Absolutely yes. And that's continuing value to anybody that's interested, anybody in the industry.
I would think that would be important, because then the interviewee would not feel like they're just being used or being set up for something. You're actually telling them that they're important, and you would like to have this discussion with them. And, oh, by the way, it's going to be a podcast for other people to listen to.
Yes. I'll add one more thought on this topic. My partner and I have been doing this for 2.5 years. And in 2.5, I don't know how many interviews, 400 or 500, somewhere in that range. Exactly 0 times have we had someone get upset because they felt they were being exploited or manipulated. It hadn't happened.
So that's evidence right there that it's a successful method.
Yeah, you can't be dumb about it. If I started twisting your arm right now, Bob, that would be very tacky and would tick you off, and you wouldn't talk to me ever again. So if you're stupid about it, you'll get in trouble. If you're intelligent about it, I mean, in 2.5 years, I haven't. And you know how dumb I can be, Bob.
Okay, I think we're a little over an hour here. I think we might want to wrap it up here, Todd and John.
Sure.
I don't see any new questions that have come in.
And I don't see any in the chat.
Okay. Well, to all of the attendees, thank you for your participation, and my hope is that you have several takeaways, including how what we're calling radio can be a part of your marketing toolbox. And Todd, thank you for the contribution of your time and expertise. Your presentation was really insightful, and we wish you the best. John, thank you again for being our host and our sponsor. Software Toolbox has been wonderful to CSIA, and we really appreciate it. And to our attendees, be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. It'll arrive in your inbox within about an hour and takes only 30 seconds to complete, and your feedback is necessary for our continuous improvement. So in closing, here's a real quick bullet list. The 2013 CSIA Executive Conference registration opens next week. And register early to be sure that you can get into the conference facility, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the conference this year. We have a wonderful program for our members. Secondly, I encourage everyone to participate in the CSIA Statistics Program. It's for benchmarking your company performance against your peers, and a salary survey is now a component of that. And it's specific to the CSI industry. And both of those, the KPICS and the salary survey, can by all means save you money. Thirdly, the results of our industry survey conducted in collaboration with J.P. Morgan will be in the survey results library early next week, so be sure to check that out. Two quick ones then also, on a quarterly basis, we get reports from Alan Bulu at ITR, so you can stay abreast of the state of the economy globally without having to wait till the conference. And lastly, the ARC Advisory Group, watch on a quarterly basis for the automation index that you'll be receiving. And it's a snapshot of the economy of the automation industry. So, an FYI is that the CSIA monthly webinars are archived at our public website, controlsys.org, so anyone can go there and find this or any other previous webinar that has occurred. So, this is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director. Thanks again for attending. Bye.